So thank you once again, Vijay, for kindly coming to this forum, and we'll be discussing. I think we can start discussing on how different intellectual traditions evolved in India in Vedic philosophy. So would that be okay?
Yeah, briefly we can talk about things.
Okay.
There are many intellectual traditions.
Yes. So before that, maybe I was just reflecting what we discussed last two sessions. So, and of course, a little bit of reading that I have done from your books. So it seems to me, when I was reflecting the nature of reality and what we really call as real, and I mean, and there seems to be a dichotomy between the understanding that prevails in West, what you call the reality, and I mean, what is they are kind of more favorable towards the idea that reality is something that exists outside of your mental perception or experience. But it seems in our Vedic tradition, particularly referring to the example of Hansa Avatar discussing with Lord Brahma. So there is a continuous inflow outflow. I mean, there is no really that kind of phenomenon doesn't seem to occur in the Vedic perception of reality. What we call reality, and what is I mean, more fundamental than reality. So there seems to be a difference. Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, the general word realism in the West means something different than you, right? And I just did a long post today about this. So in Cartesian philosophy, Descartes establishes that I exist. I think, therefore I exist. And then he wants to establish that the world exists.
Yes.
Right. So that kind of thing, we also accept that there is something different than me.
Yes.
It may be God, it may be other souls, it may be other things, material energy and things like that. So we accept that there is something other than me, but we don't accept that it is of a fundamentally different kind than me. Right? So I am, a conscious person, and everything else is a conscious person. Okay. And so that is the realism. Realism is basically that there are other conscious beings other than me. It may be God, it may be other souls, even material energy is a conscious person. We have discussed extensively.
Yeah, exactly.
In last year. So everything is a conscious person, right? So you can say there are many persons. So because there are other persons or persons other than me, and they're different from me, therefore there is reality. In the West, reality means matter, and what matter actually means has been a subject of some debate.
I'm sorry for that.
Yeah. So in the West, reality is taken to mean something that is not just different from me, but it's not just different in the sense that there is another thing, but it's also fundamentally different in nature or type, you can say.
Okay.
Right. So mind versus body, soul versus matter, and what that means is that matter is not conscious. Matter is inert.
Exactly.
So that kind of thing has existed. So reality for them means something other than me and something different from me. Okay, those two things are there. Whereas reality in our conception is that there is something other than me, but it is not different than me. Okay, those are two kinds of things. Yeah.
Thank you. So, as I reflect different intellectual traditions in India, or maybe any intellectual tradition anywhere in the world, so this decisiveness of what is reality and what is not, I think that classifies uh, different philosophies. Even, for example, if I talk about in our culture, there was Buddhism, there was Jainism, there was Advaita Vedanta, other Vaishnava Vedantas. So what is the if I make a demarcation between Western way of thinking and Eastern way, then in Eastern way of thinking also there are so many varieties of ideas. I mean, Buddhism says, ultimately matter is kind of everything. Although they do accept some kind of not exactly reincarnation, but some kind of continuity to explain their things. But still, it is quite different from our Vedic perception. And then Advaita Vedanta seems to be radically apart from Vaishnava interpretations of Vedanta. Again, there are 6 systems of philosophy. So the conglomeration of so many ideas. So oftentimes posits a problem that people come to the conclusion that this is maybe there is no one particular reality everybody's I'm talking about. There's just all ideas are welcome, or how do you see all this different variegatedness in interpretations?
Yeah, so in this age called Kali Yuga, Kali Yuga means the age of quarrels.
Yeah. Right.
Kalaha Yuga. Kalaha means quarrels, right? Arguments, fights, disagreements, all these things. This is Kalaha.
Right.
And this Kalaha arises because people start propounding their theories without trying to solve all the problems. Okay.
Could you elaborate on that? How does
Huh?
that? Could you elaborate on that? How does that mean?
Yeah. So we'll go into that, right? So people basically, if you narrow your focus onto one particular thing, somebody says voice is not clear. Can you hear me clearly or not?
Yeah, me also.
Sound is clear, sir, from both the speakers.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. See, even if you look at why there are different departments of academia in the West, it's because they narrow the focus.
In a sense, it helps also then to flourish in that particular area.
Yeah. So what they call a closed system.
Yeah, closed system.
So if you want to study, let's say just economy, okay, on its own, they call the subject economics. But economics, itself doesn't work because there are people involved in it. So human psychology plays a very important role in economics, right? So for example, you say society, people must cooperate. Okay, that requires a different human psychology versus when you say that people must compete, right? Similarly, when you say that there has to be a supply and demand system, what will create the demand? That depends on psychology. Okay, so you cannot separate economics from psychology, let's say. Okay. Similarly, you cannot separate psychology from physiology, right? Whenever your mind is unhealthy, your body is, also not healthy. Then when you run certain economy, then you cannot separate that from, let's say, ecology, right? What's happening on the planet Earth and things like that. So if you go on, if you actually try to understand, if you sit down and think about it, you cannot actually separate all these subjects. Okay. And but what happens is, in this age called Kala Yuga, people want to separate. They want to, so the argument begins from the problem that I think the mind is independent of the body, or I think the body is independent of the mind, or I think society is independent, or sociology is independent of the psychology, or politics is independent of psychology. So people try to segment these subjects based on the assumption that there is no connection between these two things. Okay, this is very dominantly a Western approach, but it's not that it has not appeared in India. It has also appeared in India. And due to that, people have separated things out. They should not be separated. Okay. So there is a system of separation even in classical Indian philosophy, which says that we will study things from perspectives. Okay. Let's say you have a cube. Okay. So you can study the cube from 6 perspectives, or you have a pyramid, you can study it from 4 perspectives and things like that. Okay. So there is a perspective way of division in which you say, I'm studying the same thing, but I'm looking at it from a different perspective. That's one approach. The other approach is, I'm studying one cube versus another, one square versus triangle versus pyramid versus, circle, and things like that. Okay. So there is a division in Indian philosophy which says that we are studying a different perspective. And there is a system which says I am studying a different thing.
How does that differentiate?
Yeah, different. I give you an example: economics, sociology, psychology, physiology, cosmology. Okay, so these are different subjects.
Right.
Right. It is not that physics is a perspective on the reality and psychology is another perspective and sociology and economics are different perspectives. They're not talking about a perspective, they're talking about a different thing.
Yeah, they're talking about a different thing, right?
Right. Society, the word is not reducible, to, let's say, the categories of physics. And, economic categories like supply and demand are not reducible to the categories of, let's say, the mind.
Exactly.
Right. So they create different subjects which are supposed to study different objects, subjects and objects. What are these objects? They are all different objects. Okay. And the assumption is that these are separable objects. Yeah. And once that separation is created, then different ideologies are created. Okay. Then people might even come into each subject and say, let's look at it from this perspective and that perspective and things like that. For example, people might want to study the mind. They have also drawn a distinction between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. Okay, so let's say the cognitive sciences today will only talk about the conscious experience, whereas Freudian psychology or Jungian psychology would talk about the unconscious. And you can see completely different approaches. Right. Okay, they are not talking about the influence of one thing on the other thing. Similarly, what is the impact of certain culture on the economy? Okay, this is something anthropologists are doing, but not sociologists, not economics, not economists, right? So in this way, this confusion is created because you try to reduce and separate things. This is the meaning of Kali Yuga. Okay, we will try to reduce and separate things, fragment the world. Okay, and we will try, once we fragment, we will say that is not important, this is not important, this is irrelevant, that is bad, all these things will happen. Okay.
Yes, true.
Because this is like, if you are going to do physics, for example, even in you want to study a billiard ball, Billiard ball has a finite size. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
But, kinematics will say, oh, the size is not important.
Reduce it to a point.
Yes, we reduce it to a point. Similarly, when Newton did mechanics, he'll say, oh, a planet has so many trees and birds and mountains and rivers and, so many things, but it doesn't matter. It's just a point, right? So the problem is, moment people want to focus, they want to neglect other things. Okay. When they want to neglect, they will always rationalize that neglect by saying it is irrelevant, it is not important. Okay. And then the other guy who's studying that, he'll come and say the other thing is not important.
Yes.
Right. So for example, postmodernism nowadays says, oh, science is not important. What is science? You have created some theory. It is your interpretation of the world.
Yeah.
It is all driven by Western dogmas. Right. And what really matters is how I give the world meaning. And since that meaning is given by individuals, you give a different meaning, I give a different meaning. Therefore, everything is subjective. There is really no objectivity. Whatever you call science is also subjective. That's their argument. Whereas scientists will say everything is objective, there is nothing called subjective.
And the meaning, the theory itself is a meaning given by set of people who accept the same dogma.
Yes, yes. So in this way, divisions arise when you say that I will focus on only one thing. Okay.
Right.
And other things are irrelevant, unimportant, out of focus. Basically, that is the origin of all the conflicts. But in the Vedic system, we always say that we will study the whole. What is the whole? God is the whole. Okay. So we will study the whole. Once we study the whole, then we have studied everything else.
It includes everything else.
It includes everything else. Even if we study the parts, we would not say this is not important, that is not important. That type of thing, the moment you start saying this is not important, this is not relevant, the moment somebody says, you can assume this is the symptom of Kali Yuga. Okay. It is, of course, I'm not saying that everything is equally important. Okay. Right. There are more important things, there are less important things, but don't say that it is totally irrelevant. I will discount it while trying to understand something. Okay. So in this Kali Yuga, this fragmentation happens, this division happens. Okay. Now we can study this history, but there is nothing to be proud of in that history. Okay. I want to make that very clear, because in India, if you see nowadays, people are going gaga about Indian history. They are talking about last 2,000-3,000 years of history. This happened, that happened, this empire, that empire, so conquered, this conquered. There is nothing to be proud of it. Why? Because this is Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga means fragmentation and division. Divisions of ideologies, divisions of practices, divisions of cultures. Okay. And you can see that manifestation of that division in India. There are so many languages, so many so-called, subcultures and states, and nobody wants to be unified. Nobody wants to even accept, a fundamental principle on which there can be unity. They give more primacy to, let's say, their caste, their region, their language, than to something called Vedic system, Vedic culture. That is something that nobody even agrees upon. So basically, the thing that united is almost completely forgotten. The divisions are extremely important and being remembered about. And then people will talk about, oh, there was this empire, that empire, they conquered this, that they built this temple, etc., etc. That is not something superlative. Okay, it's not. I'm not saying it did not exist and things like that, but it is not superlative. Right? It's not something extraordinary. So if we want to understand what is extraordinary, okay, then we have to begin with God, Krishna. Okay, so we understand the whole. Once we understand the whole, then we understand everything that is part of it.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
For example, we are obsessed with history of this land. But what is this land? Whatever you call India, and it's a small country on this planet, which is a small planet, insignificant planet in this universe, which is an insignificant universe in all the material creation, because there are trillions of other universes. Okay, the size of this Bhumandala is supposed to be some 9,000 yojana or something like that, whereas the size of the universe is supposed to be 4 billion yojanas. Okay, so this is 1/1,000th, right, of the universe. There are millions of planets like this. Then this is the smallest universe, and this whole material creation is nothing, right? So we are giving so much importance to something that is associated with this land. And that is why I want to emphasize that if you want to study history, keep it with this perspective about the lessons of history, are more, focus on the lessons of history, what went wrong, what went right. Okay, the history itself is not important, at least not to me. If you want to learn history, please go to another university and learn history. Okay, they will give you dates and kingdoms and rulers and empires and all those things. That is not going to unite anybody. That's not going to give you any understanding of any unity.
We can talk about the philosophical
yes
evolution. So that
yes, so we have to understand, we have to begin with what is God. Okay, and what is the whole truth. And the symptom of Kali Yuga is fragmentation. After fragmentation, then division, fighting, clashes, me versus you, you versus me, no sense of so that is, this thing has begun. Let's say, if you go back, Buddhism, for example, what is Buddhism? Buddhism says there is no God, there is no soul. Okay, which is just like saying Newton's mechanics says there is no notion of size. Earth has no, it's a point particle. What did I do? I neglected so many properties. Right? Even a table or chair can be modeled as a point particle.
Yes, even astrophysicists model galaxies also point particles.
Yes, you can model anything as a point particle, right? What are you doing? You're neglecting so many properties. Right? So basically Buddhists come and say that, they accept that there is, something called mind and things like that. But you have to understand in the Buddhist conception, I've discussed this in many posts, please go and read that. As far as Buddhism is concerned, if you want to think in terms of physics, there is a space, which is you can call matter, material world, and there are trajectories in that space. Okay, and consciousness is that trajectory, but there is no particle. Okay, crude example.
Yes.
Right? So what is consciousness? It is evolving, and then suddenly one fine day, the trajectory ends, and you call that nirvana or whatever, mukti or whatever. It's basically end of experience. But there was no particle to begin with. It was just a trajectory. Okay, that is Buddhism. And why this Buddhism arises is because there is a gradual decline of Brahmanical culture. Okay, this age of Kali Yuga. If you want to understand history, simply one thing you have to understand: how progressively the Brahmanical culture is declining. That will explain everything. Because when the Brahmanas decline, then the Kshatriyas decline, then the Vaishyas decline, and everybody becomes, even the Shudras decline. Today, it is very, very hard to even get Shudras.
Right.
Everybody is Mlecha, Yavana, Chandala, all these things.
The qualities Bhagavad Gita describes it too high even to achieve now these
yes.
Right.
Even to be a Shudra is, what is a Shudra? It means an artisan. right? Somebody who's very competent, let's say a cloth weaver or a, high-end artisan. So it's very difficult to even get that. All these sutras will have their own, let's say, factory or things like that. They will have a workshop, they'll make things. Today, people are simply laborers, right? Most people, even we call employed people, most of the people are simply employed. Right? They don't even have that. Anyway, so just try to understand the decline of Vedic knowledge, and along with that, the decline of Brahmanical culture. That will explain everything for you, whether it is Buddhism or it is impersonalism or fragmentation of India, conquest of India by invaders, and how they have progressively reduced these things. Simply one thing, what is Brahmanical culture? It is the understanding of whole, which is God, and how all the parts are reconciled in that whole.
Right.
Okay? So when you remove the understanding of the whole, then what happens? You cannot reconcile the parts. Then each guy comes and says, I am an expert in this part, that part, that part, and then they start separating. Then every person says, either, your part is not important, my part is important. And then I create my own theories. And this has happened. Take, for example, Sankhya philosophy.
Right.
There is a person called Ishwar Krishna. He has written a book called Sankhyakarika.
Right.
And everybody is reading that Sankhyakarika and they say there is no soul. There is no God.
Right.
Sankhya is an atheistic system. Why? Because the full understanding has declined. Some bugger has come in history and he has changed, he has just given his thing about, let us separate Sankhya from other subjects.
So this 6 systems of philosophy, do you mean that it originally, say 5,000 years back, when Vedas and knowledge was classified, so it was not existent at that time?
No, it is existent. The 6 systems of philosophy, Vedanta is the last one.
Right.
Vedanta Sutra is written by Vyasadeva, okay, after composing all the Vedas.
Right.
Okay, because he compiled all the Vedas. And what are the Vedas? Let's say you take Puranas, these are conversations.
Right.
So Vedavyas is not the author.
Compiler.
He is the compiler, right? So Srimad Bhagavatam, for example, you will see, Vaishampayan, this, and then Maitreya and Vidura, and so many conversations are there.
Right.
So they are conversing and Vyasadeva has recorded. Similarly, Bhagavad Gita is, Sanjaya, who begins with Dhritarashtra Vacha, then Sanjaya Vacha, and then, it goes on and on, right? So Sanjaya is telling Dhritarashtra, Sanjaya is seeing what is happening on the battlefield where there is Arjuna and Krishna, and Vedavyasa is recording what Sanjaya is telling Dhritarashtra.
Right.
Okay, so there are layers and layers of, these things. So Vedavyasa is the compiler, but Vedanta Sutra is his authorship. He is not compiling Vedanta Sutra, he is composing Vedanta Sutra.
Right.
He has composed it. In the same way, Sankhya Sutra is composed by, say, Kapila, but Sankhya is mentioned in almost all Vedic texts. Even almost all. Everywhere you will go and see Bhumi, Apo, and Elovayu come. These 5 things are there in practically all books.
Right.
Right. And sometimes there will be more and more things, but at least these 5 things are always there. Similarly, these 5 things are there in Vaisesika, yoga, and many subjects. Yoga is talked about almost everywhere. So Sankhya and yoga is pervasively discussed. Okay. And lots of other things are discussed which are not justified. For example, everywhere you will see this person made a deity of the Lord and he was worshipping the deity. Okay. But what is deity worship? How can you worship a deity, right? How are you worshipping God when you are worshipping, clay form or a metal form or a wood form? That is Mimamsa philosophy. Right?
How is that?
now we will
Yes.
go,
Yes.
we can either discuss one subject. So here is what we will try to do today. Okay, we'll try to discuss broad outlines.
Yeah, that would
Okay?
be good.
Yeah, and we will not go into any detail. The idea is that you guys should start reading books.
Yeah, surely.
Because I can't author the book and then come to the class and explain all the books. It's and then answer questions again and again. So it's very, very exhausting.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So yeah, basically you have to understand that there was a system, there is a philosophical unity amongst all the Vedic texts, whether it is Shaiva text or Shakta text or Vaishnava text. They are discussing certain aspects of the whole truth. That aspect business you can understand if you understand Krishna. Okay. If you understand the full truth that is transcendental to this world, then you can understand how everything is unit. There is a unity. Okay. Similarly, whether it is Sankhya, Yoga, Mimamsa, Nyaya, Vaisesika, Vedanta, all these things, there is an inherent unity in them. Okay. And one of the things that I'm trying to do is establish this unity one by one. Okay. Because today the problem is, people don't think these are actually, people are thinking these are all different systems. There is no unity. The central problem of fragmentation that exists in West as departments, okay, psychology, sociology, economics, philosophy, physics, chemistry, cosmology, etc., exists in India in a different way. There is Shaivism, there is Shaktism, there is Vaishnavism, there is Sankhya, Mimamsa, Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisesika, and in each of these there are many, there is a Tantra system, there is a Pancharatra system. Okay.
Yes.
So the same problem that exists in the West also exists in India. Okay. The difference is simply that in the West, they are actually thinking we are studying different objects. Okay. Mind is a different object. Earth is a different object and cosmos is a different. So they have divided and separated these things. Whereas all these things that we call the 6 systems of philosophy or Vaishnavism, Shaivism, Shaktism, and all these things, they are actually aspects of the same thing. Okay, like cube has many aspects. Okay, so they are aspects, but because we forgot about what is the unity, therefore we said these aspects are actually different things. Okay, and then this thing has become nearly similar to the Western system, but the problem is in the Indian text, every book is discussing everything in a different way. For example, if you study Mimamsa philosophy, they want to study everything as meaning. Okay, if you study Nyaya, they want to study everything as logic. Okay. If you study Vaisesika, they want to discuss everything in terms of atoms.
Right. Okay.
And if you want to study Vedanta, they want to study everything as Brahman and the divisions of Brahman and things like that. Yoga, whole and part. So they are studying the same subject using a different approach. It doesn't mean that the other approach is false or we are disagreeing with that approach. It's saying that if you use that approach, you can discern many things that you can focus on certain things that you would not have focused on otherwise.
Right.
Okay. So one major milestone in this whole process of fragmentation is the advent of Shankaracharya. Okay. And in the first lecture, we talked about the dualisms. Okay, mind-body dualism, or we said there is a form-substance dualism, which then become other world, this world dualism. Right. Then it became mind-body dualism, soul versus matter dualism. Okay. Now you look at Advaita Vedanta. Okay, you will see the same dualism. Brahman is consciousness and Maya is matter. Brahman and Maya. So you can say mind and body. Okay.
Yes. But
the difference is simply that in Greek philosophy, the substance is material and the form is transcendental. Okay. Advaita Vedanta reverses this process. Substance is transcendental and form is material.
Yep. Just a question about that. So Advaita Vedanta seems to not have a proper explanation of what is Maya. I mean, they have just
Advaita, okay, let me explain this to you. Okay. Advaita is not a Vedic system.
Oh.
Okay. Prior to Shankaracharya's commentary on Vedanta Sutra, there is no record of anything Advaita being anything to do with the Vedic system. Advaita is an alien system. Okay, but it existed in India just like Buddhism exists.
Right.
Jainism exists, Sikhism exists, other philosophies may exist. Advaita is like that. Shankaracharya changed that when he did a commentary on Vedanta Sutra to create something called Advaita Vedanta. Okay, it's a merger of Advaita. He said that I can rationalize my Advaita philosophy using your Vedanta system.
Yeah.
That is what he's saying. Like, for example, I might come and say that, I am a pantheist or I am a panentheist or whatever. I am a ontological dualist or whatever. I can have my philosophy. Right. And I can use that to interpret Vedanta Sutra in a way that says, I can say that, look, Vedanta is saying what I am saying. Rather than trying to say what Vedanta is saying. You understand there's a difference in these approaches. So Advaita was not a Vedic system, but after Shankaracharya, it became sort of, it railroaded the Vedic system and entered into it, which is what is explained everywhere. Lord Shiva says to Parvati, I will appear and, create all this, all these things. Okay. Now there are several problems in Advaita Vedanta. Okay. First thing is, what is Brahman? Like we have discussed, Brahman is infinite, quantitatively infinite. Okay, it is huge. So, and then what is Maya? They will still agree and accept that it's a system of qualities, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. So you have quantities and you have qualities. And you say the world is a combination of quantity and quality, or infinity and quality, because Brahman is basically quantitatively infinite and the world is. So this is the first problem. How does something quantitative interact with qualitative? Second thing is, you again get substance versus form, right? Which is there in Greek philosophy. The difference is Brahman is substance and Maya is form. Right? In Greek philosophy, you will say there is a plenum, the world is a substance, and then there are forms which are geometric. So, and then so again, same problem, form versus substance. And now the difference is the substance has free will, the form is material and inert. Whereas in Greek philosophy, it was inverted, the form was transcendental and substance was material. So there are, numerous problems which are very similar to Greek philosophical problems. Okay, it is more Western than Vedic philosophy. It's a more Westernized approach, and how that comes into India. It's effectively Advaita Vedanta is Western philosophy, Western, you can say Greek form substance dualism type of thing that came into India. Okay, so we can say that this is what people do not understand. They think Westernization came to India 300 years ago when Christians came to India, or the British came to India, Or they say that foreign invaders, Muslims invaded India and therefore foreign ideologies came to India. No, it started in 800 AD. When Shankaracharya introduced Advaita Vedanta, that is the beginning of westernization or introduction of Western ideologies in India.
Yeah, this is a little.
Okay. So what did Shankaracharya essentially do? He said, look, this whole world. So previously to that, there is a system of dharma. Okay. Dharma means many things. You can do some yajna, puja, and things like that, but it is broader than that, right? Kshatriyas have their dharma, Vaishyas have their dharma, Brahmanas have their dharma. There's teachers, and there is a certain way to behave and things like that. Now, this is societal organization, which we call dharma. It is not Sanatan dharma.
Right.
There's a difference between dharma and Sanatan dharma. Sanatan dharma is everything that you do in relationship to God.
God.
Soul is doing something in relationship to God. That is Sanatan dharma. Okay, man is doing something in relationship to his wife. Husband is doing something in relationship to his wife. That is dharma, or his child. That is dharma. But soul is doing something in relationship to God. That is Sanatan dharma. So there's a difference between dharma and Sanatan dharma. We agree to that.
Right.
Okay. However, you will not practice Sanatan dharma 24 hours in a day. If you chant a mantra in 2 hours in a day, that is maybe, you're doing Sanatan dharma. Other 22 hours, you have to do dharma.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So, even though you can say that we should remember God all the time, Manmana Bhav Bhakto Madhyajima, so 24 hours you can do Sanatan dharma. But the reality is, most of the people, and this is, I'm saying people are dedicated, devotees are doing it for 2 hours, 3 hours in a day, 4 hours in a day.
Right.
Other people are not even doing for 15 minutes. Right?
Right.
Now, if they stop doing the dharma, what will happen? They will never come to Sanatan dharma.
Right.
Whatever they are doing Sanatan in terms of Sanatan dharma will also stop because they have stopped doing dharma. So this is the trick that Shankaracharya played with Mimamsa. Mimamsa was trying to do dharma. What is dharma? What is duty in this world? So he said this dharma is not going to take you to transcendence, which is correct. Right? Man doing his duties towards his wife is doing her duties towards the children, son doing the duty towards the father, you are paying taxes, okay, doing a duty towards the government, the society. This is not going to take you to liberation.
Right. Right.
This is not going to liberate you from this world, okay? But it is the ground or the podium on which you stand to do Sanatan Dharma, right? If you don't pay taxes, society collapses, then you can't even practice dharma, Sanatan dharma, right? Because you need some policeman, some military man, somebody to make sure the roads are working, electricity is coming, water is coming, whatever, right? So Sanatan dharma in this world is practiced based on dharma. But Shankaracharya said, oh, you guys are doing so much dharma, it's not going to take you to transcendence. And he defeated, the Mimamsa system, as a result of which dharma stopped. Okay. When that dharma system stopped, basically the Brahmanical culture declined drastically. Okay. The first decline is that Brahmanas started declining because you say, oh, this puja and all is not required. Brahmanas are doing yajna. Okay. That was their employment. So if you say that, oh, this yajna is not required, what happens? Immediately all the Brahmanas are unemployed. What are they going to do? They are going to become Kshatriyas or Vaishyas or Sudras. They can't become Kshatriyas because they may not have the strong body. So they'll become businessmen or workers.
Right.
Or they will start doing some manipulative system to survive, whereby people will lose respect for them.
Right.
Okay. So this is the origin of the fragment. So this is one important point to understand. There is a difference between dharma and Sanatan dharma. Dharma doesn't lead you to transcendence, but it is necessary. It is, you can say it is necessary, but not sufficient. Okay, for society. It's necessary, but not sufficient. But if you remove the necessary part, then society falls apart. This is one problem. Now the question is, how do you establish this system of how do you establish this Advaita Vedanta, which is an alien philosophy, based on the Vedic text? The simple problem is, even if you simply interpret Vedanta, you will not get support for that from in every other text, because Sankhya will say that everything was unmanifest and then it started manifesting by the presence of God. Right? There is a discussion about God, for example. God will not pardon your sins simply if you pray. And there are so many, and similarly yoga will say Ishwar Pranidhan, surrender to God. Right? So every system is talking about God. Every system is talking about God having qualities. Every system is talking about a different kind of logic, which doesn't match with Advaita. Okay. So Shankaracharya, basically, when he commented on Vedanta Sutra, he rejected everything else.
Except Vedanta Sutra.
Except Vedanta Sutra. He rejected, he said Sankhya is false. Vedanta is saying Sankhya is false. Vedanta is saying Nyaya is false. Vedanta is saying Vishishtika is false. Vedanta is saying, Mimamsa is false. Okay. And then he created all these things like Shruti and Smriti.
Yes.
Okay. Shruti is important, Smriti is not important. Even in Shruti, the four Vedas are not important, only Upanishads are important. Okay. So he created so much chaos in the Vedic system where people started, now if you, for example, say that, which Sankhya is not important. So what will happen? The Sankhya guy will go separate. Say, to hell with you. Right? So Sankhya will separate from Vedanta. Yoga will separate from Vedanta. Okay. Vaishnavism will separate from Vedanta. So in this way, numerous fragmentations have been created by Shankaracharya commenting on Vedanta Sutra, bringing in something alien, which was not compatible with the Vedanta Sutra itself. Okay, it's very, very difficult to do that. And you have to read Vedanta Sutra to understand what he does it. I have, it will take a very long discussion to explain what he actually does, how he, interprets this text in a certain way, which creates numerous problems. But basically what he did is, he created schisms, okay, divisions. Vedanta is contradictory to everything else. The philosophy of Vedanta is contradictory to the philosophy of Puranas, to Pancharatra, to Tantras. Okay, even the four Vedas.
Sorry to interrupt. Earlier times also, when Vyasadeva compiled, so there Vedanta was held high than any other philosophical.
Yes, it is held high in the sense that it is the summary. End of knowledge. Anta means conclusion of knowledge.
Okay, so it reconciles everything else also.
Yes, because see, Vedic texts, if you see, there are 18 Puranas.
Right.
Just Srimad Bhagavata Purana is 18,000 verses. Okay. There are other Puranas which are even bigger. Then there are 108 Upanishads. Then there are 4 Vedas which have, numerous Sangitas. Right. Then there is a Tantra system, Pancharatrika system. So if you try to compile this thing, it is basically, it will fill up a room.
Right.
All these books. Right. Now, how can people say that, let's say I want to study all these things, but I need to get the summary gist conclusion in the beginning. It's like you write a book, you have a preface to the book, introduction to the book, short introduction, right? You basically say that what this book is about or what this book states. Right. So Vedanta Sutra is a preface to Vedas, you can say that. Or you can also say that we could put this at the end and call it epilogue, in which case it will become Vedanta. Anta means end. But it's basically the summary, right? So to make it easy to understand, Vedanta Sutra exists, right? It's the summary. So it is given importance relative to some of the other texts. Okay. But this importance, we have to understand what is the meaning of this, importance. It is for a student to, just like if you're going to read a book, you should read the preface before you read the rest of the book. Right. Now, if I say that there is a room full of books or a library of books, and you have to read all the books, which might take you your entire lifetime, don't you want to read the preface and understand it before you spend dozens of years? In that sense, it is important. That doesn't mean that there is a contradiction between this book and the other books. And whenever to reconcile the contradiction, we'll give priority to Vedanta Sutra and non-priority to the other text. No. What is the meaning of importance? Importance for the Advaitavadis is that Upanishadic statements are important, Puranic statements are not important.
This is hypocritical.
This is hypocrisy, right? That is not the meaning of importance. Importance is simply the student has come in, you will be taught this first, then next, then next, then next, then next, so that he can learn everything. Okay. Importance doesn't mean that, oh, there is a contradiction between book A and B, and to resolve the contradiction, we'll give A more importance and B less importance, right? Which means whenever there's a contradiction, override the contradiction by the statement of one book rather than the other. That is not what is being, that's not the meaning of importance. But that is the interpretation of importance that you would see people give. Shruti is more important than Smriti. Okay, you would see this thing. Okay, what is Shruti and what is Smriti? So people will say, okay, Upanishads are Shruti. Okay, so then let's say Bhagavad Gita is Shruti. Okay, but Bhagavad Gita is part of Mahabharata. Okay, so is that Smriti or Shruti?
It's both.
Okay, so people will say Mahabharata is Smriti, but Bhagavad Gita is Shruti because it is Upanishad. Then what is the meaning of Shruti? Shruti is that which has been spoken by the Lord. Okay, so if Lord Kapila speaks in Srimad Bhagavatam, is that Shruti or Smriti?
It should be Shruti. And
so the point is this Shruti Smriti business is basically it's Shruti. This distinction is not hard and fast. Okay, even for example, you take Upanishads. Okay, even in Vedanta Sutra, for example. Okay, there is a story about one king who goes to teacher. Okay, that teacher insults him and he gives him some money. Okay, said, I want to learn Vedic knowledge, you give me some money. And that teacher says, you are a Shudra, and he throws him out. Okay, now God is not speaking that story, so how can this be Shruti? It is obviously a story that is remembered and passed through generations. Even in Vedanta Sutra, there is a story.
This is interesting.
Right? So even Vedanta Sutra will become Smriti. Okay. Then Vedanta Sutra, always you will say, they'll describe something and they'll say Smritescha. Also Smriti says the same thing.
Right.
Smritescha occurs so many times. So Vedanta Sutra is not making a distinction between Shruti and Smriti. Smriti also says the same thing. But you will always see, oh, Shruti is important, Smriti is not important. Upanishad is important, for Vedas are not, Puranas are not important. So you can clearly see all these things, going on because of Advaita Vedanta, because they created schisms. Everywhere you will see they create schisms. They come in and they say, this is not important. That this is exactly what I was telling you at the beginning. I am studying the particle length is not important. Okay. This is the meaning of schism. You come in and then they'll say Sankhya, for example, will say Satkaryavad. Okay, Satkaryavad we have discussed. The effect is eternally present in the cause. Okay, what is Advaita? It is Asatkaryavad. Because Maya, which creates the world, is separate from Brahman. You understand?
Yes.
Maya is not a part of Brahman. Maya is separate from Brahman. Whereas Satkaryavad says the effect is eternally present in the cause.
Yes, sorry to interrupt. Actually, I have a long-standing doubt on this issue of in the Advaita and Vaishnava schools. If in Advaita school, when they talk about Maya as separate from God, I mean the Brahman, and Brahman is the reality in the sense this is all. I mean, if they say there is no distinction, I mean no duality. I mean, this is all that they have. But then, what is Maya then? I mean, is it false? I mean, how do they really?
No. Maya literal translation is that which is not.
No, that is in the Vaishnava understanding.
Yes, even in Vaishnavaism, even in Advaita system, that which is not. This is why they call it illusion. Remember, you were talking about illusion.
Yes.
Okay. So, what does it mean that something is not? Okay. Let us say you are a full person. Okay, Jyotiranjan.
Right.
But you talk with your mother in one way. Talk with your father in another way, you talk with your friend in another way. Okay, you talk with, let's say, your employer in another way. When you are talking with your employer, some things are hidden. Okay, when you're talking with your mother, a lot of other things are hidden. That is Maya, which means you are not seeing the full thing.
Right, not in connection.
Huh?
Not in connection with the whole.
No, I did not say that. I'm saying you as a person has many aspects.
Right.
Okay. All the aspects are not visible all the time in all the places to everyone.
Right.
Okay. That aspect business is what is. So this, when the aspect is not visible, then it is called hidden.
So that is Maya, you were saying.
Yes, Maya simply means, let's say, for example, Nrsingadev appears from a pillar.
Right.
Okay. So God is there in the pillar also. Not just as Paramatma, the full God is there. Yes. Every form of God is there in the pillar, including Nrsingadev.
That's why we worship the deities.
Yes. So no, see, don't go everywhere. Just stick to one point. Okay. That is where we worship the deities. No, that is not what I'm saying. That you can worship the bed also.
No, that is not possible.
Right. You can worship any object and say I'm worshipping God. That's not what we are talking about. I'm saying God is there. Maya tatamidam sarvam jagat avyakta murtina matasthani sarva bhutani na chaham teshu avasthita. Okay, so I am there in everything. Maya tatamidam sarvam, but it is avyakta murti. It is hidden. Okay, my full form is hidden. I am so. Everything that is you are seeing is manifesting parts of God, partial qualities of God. There is some beauty in everything. There is some wealth in everything. There is some, all the, like Krishna says, I am the taste of water, light of sun and moon. Okay. Yes. So everything is God partially.
That is true.
Okay. Everything is God partially. So what has happened? What happened to the remainder? Did God cut himself into pieces? No.
No.
God is covered by Maya in this material world, such that Maya will show a part of God.
That is.
Okay. So the definition of Maya, that which is not, what is it not? Not God.
So this is with respect to the observer, like me and others, who are part of this world, and they are trying to see the reality. So for them, this kind of curtain that hits.
Yes, you can say it, you can say it's a filter. I
It's a
have done
filter.
this in many books. There is a book called Moral Materialism. It discusses this topic about Maya at great length. Maya is a filter.
Right.
It is filtering reality. That reality is God.
So for Advaita Vedantist, I mean, particularly followers of Shankara, so Shankaracharya. So the Maya is a factual existence or not?
Maya is a factual existence. Yeah, I mean, okay, see, we can discuss Advaita for hours. Okay,
Yeah.
because Advaita has many doctrines within it. Okay, there is a Parinamvad, there is I forget all the names now. There are many doctrines. Some doctrine, you know, will say that the world is an effect of Brahman, like a transformation of Brahman. It's like clay became a pot.
Mm.
Okay, this is called Parinamvad.
I think Vivarta, I think.
Vivartavad. Yeah, Vivartavad, Parinamvad, all these things. The point is this, okay? We can go into depth into this, but I can't do that on these lectures.
Oh, that's
Okay?
true. We can
You
just.
guys have to invest time and study these things,
Right.
you know, and read the books. Then, because I mean, simply one subject of Vedanta is, you know, 1,000 pages.
Yeah, right.
How to summarize that in a 1 hour? It will take 1,000 hours,
Right.
right? So the point is that Shankaracharya created or imposed a system which forced divisions.
Mm.
Okay, that is his genius.
True.
He broke the Vedic system into pieces.
Exactly.
Simply by commenting on Vedanta, saying Vedanta is the most important, Sankhya, Nyaya, Mimamsa, Yoga, all these things are not important. Then Upanishads are important for Vedas, Puranas, Tantras, you know, other things are not, Pancharatra, this is not important. By creating this not important or, you know, unimportant, false, he basically put into doubt the certainty or the truthfulness of the Vedic system. Okay? In Puranas, everywhere the personality of God is described. But if you reject all the Puranas, then you should also say, hey, all the temples which are worshipping the deity are also false. Right?
Right.
Why should we worship the deity? That means, why are all the temples required? Let's break down all the temples. What is the answer? Then they start mixing stuff, confusing things. Oh, you can worship God in any form. Right? That is why this new generation of, you know, Prabhupada used to criticize. It's a jato mat tato pat. As many beliefs, as many paths.
Right.
Which means you can actually, according to them, you can even worship bed, table, chair.
Even worse than pantheism.
Right? So basically, this is the reason that faith, you know, or religion the division started because of this Advaita. Because first of all, they stopped dharma. Okay, they said don't perform this dharma. Once they stop the performance of dharma, then Sanatana dharma also gradually declines. That is point number one. Second thing is, from a textual perspective, they say that this is not important, that is not important. They create divisions instead of unity.
Right.
Okay. And once they create divisions, what happens? Everybody takes their book and says, to hell with you, I am going and creating my own parampara system. I am, you know, my Sankhya system is separate, Nyaya is separate, Mimamsa is separate, Tantra is separate, you know, Bhakti is separate, Jnana is separate, Yoga is separate. This is what has happened today in 1200 years. Okay, there is no glory in this history. It is a highly unglorious problem. Okay, And we have to undo that problem. That undoing means destroy all these divisions and establish the unity. And when I say destroy the divisions, I don't mean, everything is false. I mean to say that this conflict between, these things everybody's saying, today you can ask anybody what is Hinduism. They don't know. Is Hinduism, worshipping Ganesha? Is it Vishnu? Is it Rama? Is it Krishna? Is it Durga? Is it Shiva? Is it what? Or is it, Brahman, or, none of this, or simply a way of life?
For outsiders, it's all khichdi.
Khichdi, basically. Right? So this khichdi business has happened because of Shankaracharya. He created a major damage. He broke things down, created fragmentation. Once the fragmentation happened, India started, and there is a long, you will find a lot of posts on my blog. You can go and read them. You would see this history discussed in detail. I can't repeat that because it requires a very elaborate discussion. Plus, it's already there. Those who are interested will read, and those who are not less interested or not interested. So, once Shankaracharya had created all these divisions, okay, then successive acharyas like Vishishtadvaita. One more thing that you have to understand is that the actual quality system, okay, the actual system of what we call gunas, right? And guna doesn't just mean prakriti guna; it can also mean guna of God. Okay, this quality system is a bhed system. Okay, and in this bhed system, you get what I call simultaneous oneness and difference, or it's a difference and non-difference. Okay, this is logically contradictory. Okay, so the standard tool in the hand of Advaitavadi is logic.
Right, it falls apart.
Okay, so whenever you talk about any Vedic, they will say logic. Logic is most important.
Right.
And you are talking about something logically contradictory, because bhed and abhed, how can it be bhed and abhed?
Just do not fit anything into logic.
It doesn't fit into their logic.
Right.
Okay, so whatever you say after that, so this is the primacy assigned to logic, and we have clearly said that in a system of qualities you cannot do this binary logic. But this binary logic was not there in India because of this quality system. Shankaracharya brings this system of logic, which is, you can say, binary logic, right? Either true or false. This is why you say Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya. Brahman is true, Jagat is false. So clear true false distinction, isn't it?
Right.
Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya, Brahma Jiva Eva Na Paraha. The Jiva is Brahman, Eva Na Paraha. Certainly there is nothing beyond that. This is the simple summary of Advaita Vedanta. Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya, Brahma Jiva Eva Na Paraha. Okay. So, because of this problem that, there is nothing beyond this. Okay. So they use logic. Now what happened is, once Shankaracharya had created this, then first comes Vishishtadvaita Ramanujacharya. So every Acharya has tried to solve this problem of, establish the existence of God, right? Which is when the Advaitavadis say that, Brahma Jiva Eva Na Parha. There is nothing beyond Jiva, nothing beyond Brahman. Okay, so there is no God and things like that. So they have tried to introduce. Okay, every time they introduce, some new contradiction is created. Okay, this history of problems is discussed in my introduction to Vedanta Sutra. If you read that, what are the problems?
Yes.
Okay, so Advaita system is most consistent. It's not 100% consistent because every dualism has some problem. Okay, but you can say it has less logical problems compared to all the successive systems. So Vishishta Advaita has more issues. Dvaita has even more issues. Shuddha Advaita has more issues, And then Bheda Bhed has more issues. Advaita, Achintya Bheda is the most inconceivable. They have come to the point where they say we just cannot conceive it anymore.
Opposites glued together.
Yes. Whereas Advaita, let's say it's conceivable. They begin with conceivability and we ended with inconceivability. The spectrum means the problems are consistently growing from a logical standpoint. Therefore, whenever you try to solve a problem, right, whenever any acharyas try to solve a problem, Advaitavadis will always criticize and say, you have created a new contradiction. You are not logically consistent. So logic is the tool to beat for everything.
Right.
You can simply keep on using logic and say that, oh, your doctrine is contradictory.
But who says that the logic itself is the prime?
That is why Bhakti created a schism and said, oh, you guys are relying on logic. We don't rely on logic. We just rely on Bhakti. So division between Jnana and Bhakti was created. Why? Because they are beating on logic and people are not able to say this is not logic. There is another logic. We use a different logic.
Veda Ved logic.
Better logic, which is what Veda Ved logic, the quality system logic. Right. You can say non-binary logic. Okay. So this whole history of 1200 years is simply about using logic to create divisions, fragmentation. Then when successive acharyas try to reconcile the problem, you keep using logic to beat it back and say, hey, your system is contradictory, more contradiction. But what the acharya is saying, hey, so many Vedic statements are being left out, right? We want to bring Vedanta has to be the conclusion of Veda. Veda is all the books, and we will bring all the books conclusion into Vedanta. But Advaitavadi will say, no, Purana is not Veda. Tantra is not Veda. 4 Vedas are actually not Veda. Only Upanishad is Veda, and Vedanta Sutra is, it has. So basically, somebody is trying to bring more Veda into Vedanta, whereas this guy is saying, no, it is actually not important. It's secondary. Whenever you are bringing in, it's creating contradictions. Yeah. So what is happening? Fighting, basically. When fighting happens, then divisions happen. Okay. So even in Vaishnavism, you will see Shuddha Advaita is one parampara, Vishishta Advaita is separate parampara, Dvaita is separate parampara, Bheda Bhed is separate parampara, Achintya Bheda Bhed is another parampara, and Advaita is separate parampara. So 6 paramparas. 6 paramparas simply based on one book called Vedanta Sutra. Other 5 systems, separate paramparas. Tantras, separate parampara. Pancharatrika, separate parampara. 4 Vedas, separate parampara. You see?
Right.
How big the problem is. Okay. And it is all originated from that single point.
If I just, sorry to interrupt, maybe. So, if I refer to Srimad Bhagavatam, particularly 4th, 5th chapters, where first canto, so the statements comes like Vyasadeva, through his successive disciples, grand disciples, he classified Vedas and started different paramparas for the dissemination of this knowledge.
Yes.
Somebody, Paila became in charge of something, Gemini became in charge of something. So, in a sense, parampara also existed during Vyasadev's time.
Yes, parampara exists doesn't mean fighting exists.
Yeah, right. That is true.
Right. Parampara exists doesn't mean fighting exists. Like, for example, in the Vedanta Sutra, you would see Vyasadeva quoting Gemini. Vyasadeva quoting somebody called Ondolumi, you will see he is citing other people. He says, Vyasadeva says, Jaimini says like this, Ondolomi says like this, so and so says like this. So he is citing other people. Just like you write a paper, you cite other as references. He has done referencing. Right? Because Vedavyasa has cited Jaimini, therefore Mimamsa had to have existed before. Right? So these systems are not contradictory. You would see in all the books, all the other things are being referenced.
True.
Okay, they are being cross-referenced. They are being discussed. Even if not by name, the philosophy is still like Satkaryavad is not always mentioned by name.
It is so rampant everywhere.
But it will be there everywhere. Arthavad in this Mimamsa doctrine is called Arthavad, the doctrine of meaning. The reality is all meaning. Right? And Satkaryavad says the effect comes out of the cause. Arthavad says everything is meaning. So one meaning comes out of another meaning.
Yeah. Right.
That is Sankhya. But they are not talking about it in that way, but these guys are talking. Okay. So there is no contradiction, but this contradiction has been apparently created because of this material world is a system of qualities, but those qualities are illusory. Okay. And Brahman is real, but it is quantitatively big. Quantitatively big means it is no form.
Right.
It has no qualities. Not hot, not cold, not bitter, not sweet, not big. I mean, nothing. There is no knowledge, there is no beauty, there is no fame, there is no wealth.
Strip of everything, all attributes.
Strip of everything. Then actually, what is it? Right? Let's say they would say Brahman is Satchitanand. Oh, that's fine. We also say Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Nadir Adir Govinda Sarvakaran Karanam. So Satchidananda Vigraha. Then what is actually Brahman? Okay. They cannot explain what is Brahman. They cannot even explain what is Sat, Chit and Anand. Okay. What are the different parts of Anand? What are the different parts of Chit? What are the different, like for example, say there is no beauty. Well, the beauty is part of Chit. All the relationships are part of Sat.
Right.
All the different emotions are part of Anand. Anand simply doesn't mean, anger is also bliss.
Right.
Laughter is also bliss. Sadness is also bliss. You have to know what are the different kinds of bliss. Right? When Krishna cries, when his mother scolds him, it's not that he is actually sad. That is also bliss.
Right.
It's a different kind of bliss. So there are many kinds of bliss. So these guys are just, it's very, 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 very unfortunate. These things have happened, but this is Kali Yuga.
Right.
Okay, when something so dramatic and drastic has to happen, God himself comes. And that is why, Shankaracharya is an incarnation of Lord Shiva. So we respect him also. We say, he has done this. This is the way. This is an inconceivable plan. Right? He wants to delude a lot of people. And so he has basically, there is something like philosophy also, there is supply and demand. Okay. He has created supply. He has created a supply. Whoever wants to take this, take the demand. If there is demand, take it.
Right. You
want to do this system of, but what will actually happen because of, Brahman is, this Advaita system is, you will stop dharma. You will stop the performance of dharma. For example, you would gradually say that sense of equality will come in. Okay, I am Brahman, you are Brahman, we are Brahman. So why should I respect my father? Isn't it? Why should I respect some guru? He is Brahman, I am Brahman. We are the same. Right? So my standard argument for the impersonalists is, okay, sir, we are both one. So why don't you give me all your cash? Your cash is my cash.
Right.
And I will commit all the crimes and you go to prison for my crimes because you are me and I am you.
Same.
So you take all my crimes and I'll take all your money. Can we do that?
Yeah, they say it's a Vyavaharik Satya. So
See, this is what I'm saying, right? Vyavaharik, Paramarthik, all this is nonsense.
yeah.
You tell me where you draw the line.
Mm.
You draw the line. Where is what is Vyavaharik? And either the world is an illusion, in which case, if you say that, then even caste system or whatever, every Vyavahar is an illusion then.
Yeah, precisely.
How can you say that some Vyavahar is not illusory or some Vyavahar should be honored and other Vyavahar should not be honored? So this is what I'm saying. It's a full of contradiction system. And the effect is numerous divisions, utter confusion, no clarity.
Right.
And when this thing happens, then, actually the fact is, even during the Gupta period and some of these Brahmanas, even though they had slightly declined, they could perform yajnas. Okay. So whenever any war was about to happen, they'll perform a yajna. And that enemy will be defeated. That is a fact.
Right.
They knew how to, even though they may not be able to perform it perfectly, but still they knew how to perform the yajna by which they know how to defeat all the enemies. But once Shankaracharya is done, all this yajna business stops because, Brahmanas are simply forgotten, because the thing is, nobody is keeping them alive. Their own success, they don't have a survival system. The society has stopped that. So they forgot how to perform yajna. Then they can't perform it. Even if Alauddin Khilji or whatever guy comes in, they can't perform a yajna because they have eliminated that profession. Right? Once you do that, you don't. And earlier they were relying so much on these things to protect themselves. Demigods are protecting. Right? Now they can't do yajna. Then you better have guns and weapons and missiles and all these things that people are doing now.
Right.
That also did not exist. So basically, India became vulnerable. It was conquered. It was further destroyed. Okay, but the origin is philosophical. This thing, and if you want to change that, at least we have to understand what the problem is. Okay.
Yeah, it is true. Yeah, I think you answered so nicely this aspect. Quite enlightening.
Yeah, so, yeah. And one of the thing is, see, you have to understand, around the time of Lord Chaitanya's appearance, okay, there is a very big bhakti movement all across India. Okay, it is not just Lord Chaitanya. There is, if you know Indian history or little bit, there is Surdas, Kabir Das, Mirabai, lot of these poets are there. They are all Tulsidas, right? Yes. They have advocated and promulgated bhakti across the board. And basically this impersonalism and Advaita system died. Absolutely it was dead. Because of the revival of the bhakti system. If you read Lord Chaitanya's movement, he goes to Varanasi, he defeats all the impersonalists, whether it's Prakashan and Saraswati, all the big guns he has defeated. And they all became disciples of Lord Chaitanya. Just like these Mimamsavadis, they became disciples of Shankaracharya. And then all the descendants of Shankaracharya, they became disciples of Lord Chaitanya. So what is the impersonalist system? It is dead. It is effectively dead. It's like Buddhism in India. It's dead. Okay? It was dead.
But it still remains in many different ways.
No, I'll tell you. Wait, come there. So after Christianity came into India, okay, they started attacking Indian philosophy or Indian system as polytheism. Oh, you're worshipping so many Ganesha, Shiva, Durga, Krishna, Rama, you can't decide which one. Then all these Bengalis, whether it is, bunch of Renaissance guys. I don't want to name
Yeah, we
because
all know it.
people may love them and so on. Okay. They revived impersonalism
Right.
as a solution to Christian attacks on Hinduism.
Right.
Principally, the attack called polytheism,
Mm.
and secondarily, the attack called caste system.
Mm.
Okay. So then impersonalism was revived in India through whatever is called the Bengali Renaissance or Indian Renaissance.
Mm.
You can go and read. So it was revived after it has been killed by the Bhakti movement. Surdas, Kabir Das, Tulsidas, Mirabai, Rahim, Ras Khan. There are so many of them, and of course, Gaudiya Vaishnavism.
Of course.
And, revival of Vrindavan by the 6 Goswamis and things like that. Mathura, all these things. So they have wiped out and defeat of impersonalists by going into their fortress, which is Varanasi. Right? So the personalists went into their fortress and defeated them. Similarly, for example, even after that, you see Baladev Vidyabhushan, he was being accused of, oh, you don't have a commentary. So he wrote a commentary, right? Where is all this accusation coming from? Numerous parties saying that you don't have books, you don't have this, you don't have that, so we don't recognize you. But the Vaishnavas or the Bhakti devotees comprehensively defeated all these people.
Right.
This was wiped out. It was revived by the so-called Bengali intellectuals. Okay. Right. And at that time, Calcutta was the capital of the British Empire. Right. So these guys were English educated. Okay. They started all this. They started writing things in Bengali and English, and they were the intellectuals. The rest of the India was poor. They don't even know what's going on. They're not even educated at that point in time. So impersonalism was presented as the true version of Hinduism to the British. They said, no. This is all that you are talking about, polytheism, caste system, is actually not Hinduism. The real Hinduism is impersonalism.
And whole of Western academia captured this as Hinduism.
Because the Bengali intellectuals, who were the only educated people, English-speaking people in India, they presented it like that to the British. So British said, okay, this is what it is. So in Hinduism, either is polytheism or it is, monism or impersonalism. And maybe impersonalism is the right way to understand. Of course, later on, people went and protested. What is this? Who told you to represent us? We don't agree with you, right? So then more chaos and conflict results. But basically, impersonalism got revived by a few handful of people who knew English, who could talk to the British.
Right.
When it had been wiped out previously. So we have to do that same kind of thing. Now, how to do that is a very difficult project. But you can read these things and understand.
Certainly, your commentaries on Vedanta Sutra, it's really commendable. So,
yeah, we have to read all these things. We have to understand. Commendable and all is fine. I mean, I don't like to take any credit for those things. Whenever God, Krishna wants any dumb fool can do anything. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim yat kripatamaham vande Sri Guru Dintaranam. Mukam karoti vachalam. Dumb will become orators. Okay. So my oratory is actually dumbness. But I have some grace from anyway. But basically, mukam karoti vachalam. This first sentence applies to me.
It's humility.
I'm not actually very smart or intelligent, but mukam karoti vachalam.
Yeah, it was so fascinating to hear this. Very briefly, you summarized practically the essence of the whole of intellectual tradition. This
Yeah.
was really awesome. So festival for the years. So I'm really thankful to you.